Thank you, Christine. Okay. Thank you all for coming out tonight, those in the room and remote, for your first look at the North Stonington Annual Finance Budget Proposal for fiscal year 2022-2023. My name is Paul Simons, this year's chair for the Board of Finance. Quick introduction for the Board of Finance members that are in the room. Sarah Nelson. Hi, Sarah. Mike Anderson next to her. Carl Johnson. Winona Bernine. Gary Anino. And Dan Smith. I think Amy may be online. What you'll hear tonight are a series of presentations. We'll start with us, the Board of Finance, first. Then we'll move on to Christine Wagner, representing the Board of Education. Bob will come on for the Board of Selectmen budget, and then I'll come back on just when those folks are finished up for a last slide or two, and then we'll talk about, get ready to go to questions. I'd appreciate if any questions could be held to the end of the presentations, because there are quite a few slides to get through, and we'd like to get all the information out there to the public the best we can. The plan, I believe, is for some folks to have microphones to kind of rove the audience to for questions, and then we'll take those and direct them to whoever the most appropriate person is to answer those. With that, Christine, I guess I'll go ahead and take the first slide.
I think that Bob was gonna.
Great, that's our introduction. I think we've done that. And this is the first slide for Selectman Carlson.
Good evening. I stuck in for one slide. I'll be back again as the third person in tonight, but I wanted to get in a little quicker. So there's one slide I wanted to tell you about, and it's this loose page you might have picked up when you picked up the budget. The reason I wanted to go over this with you quickly, and I won't spend much time, is the budget's going to look a little bit different next year than it does this year. We're used to the B1s and the B22s and the C3s and so on. Next year, it won't look quite that way. So if you look at the budget as you're looking at it now, you'll see on the left-hand side is numbers that will represent line items in next year. And then on the right-hand side is the budget as you know it. The reason we want to show this to you is because come July 1st, these are the buckets that we'll be using for the budget. It looks a little confusing because the number we have here, 1005.41, 0.4101, 0.5101, 0.51, it's just a long number. But what I'm trying to explain to you is what those numbers mean. The 1005 is a fund. And if you look just below there, it says general fund, general government, selectmen, salary, first selectman wages. The fund is the general fund. The second number, which is the 41, is general government. 4101 is the selectmen. 5101 is salary. And 51 is wages. So I don't expect you to remember this. I just want to have you, when you're looking at this and you're saying, what the heck am I looking at? It's just to give you an idea of what it is. I'll tell you how this came about. A few months back, I think it was in the fall, the Board of Selectmen in the town voted to appropriate some monies to go to a new software called Infinite Visions. The school was already on this software, and the state mandates that all schools are on this software. The town has a choice. It doesn't have to be on this. We're on QuickBooks at the time. But there's some reasons why we might want to be on the same as the school. One is that even though the line items aren't all exactly the same, they are part of the same program. So if you're from the school, you understand that the software when you see it, and if you're from the town hall, when you see the school's budget, you can understand the software when you see that. And around July, we started training. Our accounting generalist and our admin finance director have been spending Monday through Friday from 1 to 4 every other week, a lot of hours trying to get this down. It's not perfect yet. It's pretty close, but we can do some things with this that we couldn't do with the other one. We can add lines as needed. If someone says to us, how much paint do we use in town? Well, paint could be used by a lot of different departments. We can then build a program to tell you how much paint that we use. And then once we build that program, once we have it. So if Brian asks this year, how much paint do we use? And John asks next year, how much paint do we use? It's a much simpler project because we don't have to build it again. Once it's built, it's there. Well, how much electricity or how much oil, how much gas? So there's a lot we can do with this. The thing is, we wanted to get this out so you can at least see it, because if you ask us questions about the budget after July 1st, we're probably going to do a report the opposite way. So this will be the main part of the budget. And then on the far left, we might still do the B1, B22s or C3s for a year, just as we're doing the transition. So again, it's a little confusing now. I'm sure all the letters were confusing a number of years back, but we'll get it down. And I think it's going to be a great system for the town moving forward. Once we learn a little bit more about it, we're still training on it. And that's about it. Paul, I'm going to turn this back to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I can see that's going to be a very powerful tool for queries for the database. Thank you. I can skip to the next one, Christine. So a little bit about the budget process and some of our major considerations this year. We looked at present day economy and the terrific inflation pressures that we're all experiencing. So that was one of the main focuses. The closing the budget shortfall from the previous year was something that was very important to the entire Board of Finance. We're still supporting all the needs for Board of Education and town government, along with financing all of our capital investments that we have planned for the town. And the goal this year was really to do this all within a balanced budget and not having to look for other sources of revenue or sources of funding to accomplish this. Next slide, please. Right out at the get-go here, we got some good news from Daryl. So our grand list increased nearly $600 million this year, so up another $27 million over the previous year. Primary drivers for this were personal property, motor vehicle values as the primary growth drivers. As you'll see later in the presentation, we did get some good news from the Board of Selectmen about some additional revenues from a solar farm that's going to go online and potentially some rental income that we're going to realize later this summer. Initially, revenues from the increase in the grand list gave us an additional $767,000 of revenue that we could use to support new expenditures and priorities in the town. A little bit more about the budget process. So we started with the select departments from the Board of Selectmen under their advisement. They presented to both us and the Board of Finance at the same Board of Selectmen at the same time. We thought that was a very useful way for all of us to see all these proposals at the same time. Once that was completed, the Board of Selectmen took all of those budgets under their control and created their combined draft budget. The Board of Education, due to the complexity of their budgets, a very big piece of what we have in town, was a little bit later in the month of March that was completed. Once we had all this information, the Board of Finance did request that the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education reduce their bottom line by $106,000. And that was the only reason to do that is because we had a budget shortfall of about $212,000. So we wanted just the revenues that we'd observed at the beginning to cover those costs, both the budget shortfall and the new expenditures. Those revised budgets were received to the Board of Finance from both those departments. This meeting we were here tonight was scheduled, and the town meeting and referendum will be to be determined. That was just the kind of the highlights of the budget process that we went through the past couple months. The initial Board of Selectmen proposal and the Board of Education proposal was about $408,000 of new spending for the Board of Selectmen, but a 6% increase over last year. Operational growth was about $146,000, while capital was about $261,000. So that was a pretty significant increase, but we realized that we really shorted capital over recent years. So that was an important priority for us. Debt, there was no increase for putting money toward debt, because that all been accomplished by the good work for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance from previous years. Board of Education came in with an increase of about $350,000, or almost 2.5%. And primary driver for those increases were the need for special education and salaries in those departments. Altogether, new initial increase for new spending was almost equal to that of the new dollars coming out of about $463,000. After our request to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education, both departments did a great job, came back in with those requested increases observed. So Board of Selectmen came back in about $307,000, 4.5% increase, and some slight adjustments to the operational costs. And they did take some monies off of the capital expenditures. Still somewhat of an increase, but a little bit less than what they had originally proposed. Board of Education came in about $250,000 of new spending. I would consider that a modest increase. They were able to do that, and they have the hopes that they can cover anything that they remove from their budget and other means. All told, total approved new spending at the Board of Finance agreed to was about $555,000. Important note here, when the Board of Selectmen came back to us with their $106,000 adjustment, they also reported that $115,000 of new revenue. So that information came a little bit later in the process, but important to note here, and we can talk about it further as the evening goes on. Path to a balanced budget. So like I said, the previous 2 years, because of our commitment to the Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, and the POCD, and our debt service that we had to come to terms with, we were forced to remove some monies from our designated fund. And for the past 2 years, $440,000 for the first year and $194,000 for the second. So we did that to really avoid any unneeded tax increases to the public. We have a pretty healthy undesignated fund, and we thought this is really the best way to serve the town. Now we come to this year, the current budget cycle. So thanks to the good work of the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen, we do have a balanced budget that we're going to propose to you tonight. It has about $555,000 of new spending, modest, I would call it, but still new spending. And it's completely supported by the grand list growth. So this budget, as it sits, will have no mill increase and still be able to supply all the new spendings we're proposing. And still have $109,000 going to the undesignated fund or other priorities should we decide to go a different direction. Next one, please. Oh, sorry, right over to Christine. I appreciate that, and looking forward to Christine Wagner. Thank you.
Is this on? Good. All right, on to the fun stuff, right? Thanks a lot, Paul. I appreciate it. I have a few slides, and then I have just a couple of things I wanted to talk about that aren't really on the slides, but just to share. So I'll have Christine kind of help me back and forth. I always like to kind of recap where we are this year and what we did with this year's budget before we jump into what we need to do next year. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of the current year we're in and the review of how we built the budget that we're in currently. Last year, we had to reallocate a lot of our spending to other places because we weren't able to put it into the budget. So I don't know if you recall, but we pulled out our all of our instructional supply last year from our budget. We zeroed that out. We did have, fortunately, had some grant funding that we could use for some of our options. And we also looked to our non-lapsing account to make any purchases that were considered capital and one-time expenses. So last year, we reallocated about $270,000 from the budget, but we're still able to support those line items in other areas. We did cut special education last year, knowing that we wanted to go with just what we knew was coming, not what we had an idea or anticipated, to try to keep that budget down. This year, we're anticipating about a $300,000 shortfall for special education funding. So it's a pretty significant in the red on that line item. However, the good side of that is that we are also experiencing a significant savings in health insurance this year. So we think that we are going to be able to, we're confident we're going to be able to cover that shortfall in this year's budget with the savings from the medical. And what you'll see is that savings is going to carry out into this upcoming budget as well. So that's why we're able to come in where we are this year. We did use some non-lapsing account expenditures, and that kind of brought that balance to about $319,000 in that account. One thing that COVID did do for us financially is that we saved some money. That's probably the only silver lining on COVID for school right now. We did save significant amounts of money in transportation, was the biggest thing. So we were able to fund some money into that non-lapsing account. We don't anticipating that kind of savings continuing. So we won't be funding that account like we were able to last year, but it was helpful for the expenditures that we have going forward. And we did also fund the computer lab at the elementary school out of that fund as well. Go to the next slide. This is just a lot of the breakdown of where those reallocations came. And a big part of it, you'll see that top line item is instructional supply that needs to come back into the budget. We can't operate the school without instructional supply. We were able to put that back into the budget this year. The other things were one-time purchases. We have additional one-time purchases that we need to make. And we are currently prioritizing those purchases, and we'll look to the non-lapsing account again to fund those purchases because we knew we weren't able to put any of them into the budget. All right, so that can take us up to the next slide, Christine. So when we started the process, the administrators worked with the superintendent, Mr. Nero, to develop a zero-based budget. What's not in the slide and what I kind of wanted to go over with you guys is if you ever have the opportunity to hear the administrators present their budgets to us, it's really the exciting part of what goes on at school. Because we actually get to see not just what the dollar is, but we get to see what our money is doing for our school and for our kids. And it's pretty amazing what they're able to do on both sides of the street. Or I guess we're on one side of the street now, aren't we? So I'm just going to recap it. I'm not going to go through their whole presentation, but I just want to recap a couple of the things that they're able to do. On the elementary side, they're able to put back in supplies for all students. We currently have no school-wide writing program, so they are able to put that into this year's budget, which will create uniformity and common language from K to 6. It's also going to provide a mean to assist in writing performance. We're also able to put back into this budget consumables for mathematics. We have an Envisions 2 and a Eureka Math program that we're really excited to continue to do. It also includes access to online materials. Our surplus book and online rights have expired, so we've had to renew a lot of that. We've also done our second step in our social emotional learning programs, and we're looking to do a multi-year license because it saves us over $2,000 over a 3-year period. In our the Reading Wonders program license has expired, so we are again looking for contracts in multi-year for the reading. This will be essential work for grades K through 3. And that's just a quick overview. On the middle school, high school side, we went in and we were able to do some replacement textbooks that we've gone without. We're starting to prepare for a NEASC visit, which is going to come in 2024. We are upgrading some of our supply closet materials that need to be replenished. And we have some new course offerings that we need to offer required by the state of Connecticut. We've moved to Naviance, which is going to be really helpful for, that's not the hiring piece, that's the software that we use at Guidance to help kids for career paths for college placement. It's the program that most high schools are using and can really help kids find their direction for after school. We've also increased other online platforms for our kids that are struggling a little bit. We are aligning to the science curriculum changes and additional money for STEM, more lab kits, consumables for middle school labs, which are now updated, and it aligns our assessments. We've also upgraded to put more money into our art consumables. Our pottery class selections have doubled. The AP art program has been added, and graduation requirements are encouraging the arts. Unfortunately, we're able to give more money to our art programs this year. The other thing that we've been able to do is we have increased our transportation for co-op for sports. We're able to do more offerings by working with other schools besides just Wheeler. We now have offerings of football, wrestling, boys lacrosse, boys tennis, ice hockey, boys and girls swimming, and we're looking to add gymnastics and girls tennis as well. So just to give you guys kind of an idea of what the investment is, and it's really exciting to see the work happening. So that takes us down to the next bullet, where we ended up and with the budget that we're presenting after the cuts that were proposed by the Board of Finance is at a $14,527,467 budget. It resulted in a 1.74% increase over last year. One thing we do have currently in our school is we have reading specialists, kindergarten paraprofessionals, program supervisors, math, reading, special ed, and mental health and PD supplies. Those are all coming out of grant funds. They're really important to the programming, and we would like to keep them moving forward. So that is something that in the future, we're going to have to be discussing how to keep those critical pieces to our programming. We can go to the next page. This is just a lot of numbers, but I think it's just important to see that what money comes into the town for education. Over 2.5 million comes from the educational cost sharing from the state. We are starting to bring in tuition that comes to the town. We're anticipating over the grades next year, 18 kids coming from Voluntown and Preston, and that's going to continue to grow. This year, it's $114,000 coming into the town. And then you can see we do get from the state money for adult ed, and down below is a recap of all of our grant funds that come into the town as well. Right, so the next page will be our proposed increase. So the biggest drivers in this year's budget is, again, bringing instructional supplies back in. Our transportation is going back to where it was pre-COVID. We're anticipating increased fuel costs and increased utilities. We're hoping we can keep it in line with what we're budgeting currently. We are getting our Chromebook one-to-one program is back in the budget. And so if anybody has any questions on how that program works, it's allowing us to get Chromebooks for everybody at the high school level at this point. And then you'll also see we had to increase our special education by $186,000 this year. So that being said, if you took out the special education, our total increase would be 0.44% over last year's budget. So I think with that consideration, we've been really fortunate to have that savings on the healthcare side. And the total healthcare reduction that we're anticipating next year is about $394,000. And I'll tell you, that's a big hats off to Deb and Peter for all of their work they did with our consortium. They've been really proactive with that and making sure that we are working with other schools in the area on the consortium that we're signed up with for healthcare, and it's making a big impact this year and next year. The next slide, please. Just some staff changes that you're seeing over here. We've got some really exciting things happening, and we're able to do all of these changes and still keep our budget in line, which is also really exciting. We're bringing on Troy Hopkins as our new superintendent starting July 1st. We have a new special ed director, Allison Mullane, who started at the end of March. She's also working to assist as associate principal for Rob over at the elementary school. We have a new facilities director, Willie, and I don't know his last name, Deb, so forgive me if Quinones. Okay, so he's been doing a fantastic job over here, really getting the facilities in line, working with his crew. We are anticipating more central office changes. We have a posting out right now for a new administrative assistant, and we're looking at reallocations for our business manager position as well. The other thing the Board of Ed is looking at is our IT department, and possibly a restructure of that, or just to see what we can do with the resources we have in that department. It's understaffed right now, and so we're looking at different options. Can we go to that last slide? You said you could pop it right up. Thank you. This is just a really quick breakdown of where we started with the superintendent's budget to where we are today. And so the top section there, and I don't know how well everybody can see it, but you'll see that we pulled out quite a few things before we even came forward to the Board of Finance. So we expected a reduction on the administrative assistant. We pulled out some software. We did not go to a new website design, which we did look at doing, but we decided to work with what we have. We did have some reduction again in more additional reduction in medical benefits over what we anticipated. We did put mulch in the playground back in. We need to be mulching that playground equipment every year. So we need to have that in as a line item. We have reallocated some advertising money. We're going just to Indeed and online now to advertise our positions. We do still have to put a posting by law in the newspaper, but we're reducing it to the bare minimum to save some money there. And we anticipate it'll save us about $3,500. So we reallocated that to professional development. We've bottomed out our professional development line items to about $2,000 a year. And it's really, really important that our staff and our teachers are getting developed and having the ability to go out and work with other teachers to see what's new and upcoming in their field. So we want and feel pretty passionate about making sure we fund that correctly. Again, program supervisors, we reallocated that to grants this year. We are able to share some of the cost of the Infinite Visions with the town now that they're onto that software. And then just some other staffing that you'll see changed. And then again, we put PD back in. So at the end of that, we came down to the 14.6. We went to the Board of Finance. We worked together with them and with the town, and we were asked to cut $106,000 out of the budget proposal. So we did a couple of things there. The big one is that we have 2 retirements coming at the end of the year, and they're at a higher step. And our hope is that we can bring in their replacements at a much lower step. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed on that hiring process, and we reduced that by $70,000. We also think that in this year's budget, we'll have enough savings to purchase some of the school-wide supplies that are needed. So we're going to try to do that this year. We also went with reductions. The tuition reductions you see there are not for kids coming in. They're for the kids that we might be sending to a magnet school or to VOAG. And we reduced that number by the enrollment that we have now. That can change come May, but right now that's based on the numbers we have today. And just a few technology things you'll see in there as well, which brings us down to the 14,527,467. We can go back to the blue ones. Thank you. We can go right to the pie chart, Christine, if you don't mind. And it wouldn't be a Board of Ed budget presentation without the pie chart. Come on, you guys, this is exciting. So our overall impact is the 1.74% increase. And like always, you will see that salaries and benefits take up a large amount of that, but our actual salaries and benefits this year are decreasing. So in years past, when we've come and said, you know, part of the increase is due to salaries, that's not necessarily the case this year. Our benefits are decreasing $393,000. 96% of this budget is in fixed cost benefits and salaries. The balance of 4% goes for textbooks, library books, health supplies, athletic replacement equipment, central office expenses, and new equipment. And just again, to show our timeline of how we've done since 2011, the last 20 years, you can see we've been trying to keep pace with very low impact and increases to the town for our budget. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Bob, looks like you're up.
Thank you, Paul. First, let me introduce the two members of the Board of Selectmen, Brett Mastriani and Nicole Porter. They're here this evening. They'll be actually working the microphones later when we bring the microphones into the group so we can have questions and answers. This board put a lot of hard work into getting this budget finalized. There's a lot of additions and cuts. We didn't always agree, but I think what we're bringing to you is probably the best budget that you've seen in a few years. You go to slide 2, Christine. So if you look at the bottom of slide 2, it says this year we're proposed in the general government budget increase of 2.72. Last year, 1.36, and the year before that, 0.71. So you say, Bob, how can you say this can possibly be the best budget you've seen in a few years when I'm showing you right here, it's the highest budget you've seen in the last 3 years? Well, when we get done with my presentation, I'll let you answer that question for yourself. Turn the page, please. So one of the things this Board of Selectmen decided early on is if you went to many meetings last year, we knew we had a slew of appropriations we asked for. Things that weren't in the budget got appropriated later on, whether it be trucks, it could have been software. But we decided as a board that we didn't want to do that. We thought that was disingenuous on our part to say to the town, this is what it's going to cost us to run the town. But then 3 months from now, say, oh, by the way, we forgot this, we forgot that, and now we want an appropriation. I mean, surprises and emergencies do happen, but we're going to try to keep those to a minimum, and hopefully we don't have any appropriations this year. Second, number 2, funding the building we're in, 298 Norwich Wesley Road. This is a nightmare building for a lot of reasons, except for this room. This room serves us very well. But if you look in 2020, 2021, there was no money budgeted for the expenses in this building. And then a few months later, in June of that year, we came out and said to the town, we need about I think it was $96,752 to pay the expenses for this building. It wasn't in the budget, but we asked for it later. 2021, 2022, we did not budget any money for this building once again. Luckily, because of ARPA funding and the Board of Selectmen have decided to hold some funds back, we've held back about $140,000 that we have not spent yet for that reason. So we don't have to go to the town and say, hey, we need now money to pay all the expenses in the 298 building. We're planning to take it out of the ARPA funding. And we can do that according to the rules that the state has sent down. So this year we decided we can't do this again. We don't think we're going to get ARPA funding next year. So we are budgeting $85,000, as you'll see when we go through the budget, to cover the expenses for this building. It seems like it might be a little bit of a low number, but we do get money from the Board of Ed for their use of the building. And I have 2 potential people that are looking to rent out space in the 2-story wing. Number 3, and Paul touched on this, we decided not to use any money out of the undesignated fund if possible. 2 years ago, the Board of Finance took out $440,000 to balance the budget. Last year, they took $194,000 to balance the budget. As you know, when we come into the budget of the next season, the first thing we do is we have to give back that money because we're working on a non-balanced budget. So right off the bat, 2 years ago, we owed the town $440,000, and this year we owe the undesignated fund $194,000. We are not planning on taking any money out of the undesignated budget. So next year, there's no payback to be had when we talk about next year's budget. And when we turn the page next, rather than go through every line item, I'm going through department by department, and I'll give you an idea of what happened in that department. So Board of Selectmen, which is B1, you see there was a slight decrease. How did that happen? The first selectman's salary got cut by about 6,000 and change. Wasn't because I wasn't doing a good job, but I wasn't even here. Second probate court, it's pretty flat, $69. The Board of Finance, B3, had an increase of $4,350, but that was due to our auditor had retired and we had to go out and find a new auditing company, and it was more expensive than the one we had. The assessor's office went up $4,701.18. It's mostly because of contractual obligations when it comes to wages. Board of Assessment Appeals was flat. Tax collector, once again, up $1,661, again, contractual. And there was some office supplies in there. Town treasurer had a slight decrease. Town attorney was flat. Annexation, flat. Town clerk, $859.45, was mostly because of contractual. Next page. Economic development had an increase of $6,290, and that's because they had asked for the town for a coordinator. Now, in the past, they've asked for this, and in the past, it's been cut out of the budget. It's usually one of our first cuts. We have someone doing that now to the end of this fiscal year. Ivana, our administrative assistant at Town Hall, has been doing it. It's doing a great job, and anyone that's following the EDC will see that they've had quite a bit new material go out to businesses in town because we've had this extra help. B16, recreation. That's an increase of $15,235.04. So the first reaction there was, wow, that's the biggest one we've seen so far. But they're also bringing in an extra $18,000 on the revenue side to offset that. Fixed charges, $2,511.36, mostly through insurance increases. We did have a $10,000 reduction in pension because we had two people leave that were not fully invested, so their money went back into the fund. Elections and town meetings, it's a slight increase again because of contractual salaries and expenses. Town hall, so here we go, $85,000. Just said zero the last 2 years in a row, and as I had just mentioned, it's not fair to the taxpayer to put zero in the budget just to get a budget that sounds like it's more passable and then hit the taxpayers with a fee later on in the year. And we're trying not to do that this year. Next, social services and welfare. Coming out of COVID, and we had a thing called a community conversation back in January. And one of the things loud and clear, the first thing was, how can we tear down the middle school building, the old middle school building? Number two was, how do we deal with mental illness, with people that are in depression? And we added some money to a couple of lines there. One was the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center, who has done an awful lot of things for our town. We also added some money to something called the United Community and Family Services. Speaking to a Mrs. Costanza, which I'm sure a lot of you know, she said this is one of the top groups that they get calls from our town when people are depressed, suicidal, and they asked us for some additional funds. And we thought as a board that would be a good place to spend some money. We also added a line called a welfare line. We found that we had a situation in town with an older Marine that had trouble with housing. He was living in a mobile home with a lot of mold and mildew. And thanks to his guardian angel, which is Cheryl Haas, who's the manager of the Red Onion, we were able to find this gentleman new housing. But if we couldn't find it and the town condemned that mobile home, it's the town's responsibility to find him housing. And if we would have to put him up for 6 months while we're trying to find housing, there was no money in the fund to do that. This was a line item that's been in the budget for a number of years, but it hasn't been funded in years. So we funded it by putting $1,500 in it just to protect somebody for at least 6 months while we're looking for housing for whoever that person may be. Again, that's if the town decided to condemn their living space as we knew it. Selectmen's engineering is flat. Informational technology, mostly contractual, but also digitized maintenance. And the new software we have is called Infinite Visions. As Christine Wagner mentioned, we are sharing some of that expense with the school. They pay more of it than we do. But the digitized maintenance is all the software we need to update things like our website and other programs that the town uses. So that was an increase of $9,370.94. Turn the page. Public Works. So B27 is there 3 times because you've got the highway garage, the transfer station, and then the total. The highway garage has an increase of $16,539.99. And wages, the increase in diesel and gas, and monies that we've added to state aid roads. Public Works, which is the transfer station part of it, and bulky waste, that's mostly wages at $3,439.26 for a grand total of $19,979.25. Conservation of Health decreased because Ledgely Health District lowered their fees to us by $334. Senior Citizens, that's mostly wages for Teresa, who does a phenomenal job at the senior center. Miscellaneous minus $16,000. That's the Lake Association weed control. We have money left over in that from last year, so we didn't have to fund it at the same rate. So we're funding that by taking $16,000 out, and they still have a balance on their account. So that brings us to land use, which is the last department we'll speak about. Increase of $4,771. Wages, but also Casio training, and that's training for Nate, who's our new PDZO, and he has to have training by a certain within the first 2 years, I believe, so he can be certified in what he's doing. He can still do it as long as he's working on the training, but there's a cost to get that training done. So the government general budget is $140,954. Next page, capital expenditures. Divide this into 3 sections. First is municipal leases, which are things that we're committed to. These leases have already been determined by prior administrations. Tractor and mower, we're in the 4th year of 5 years at paying roughly $25,000 a year. The North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company tanker, year 2 out of 7 years that we're paying roughly $70,000 a year. And the North Stonington Ambulance Association ambulance and stretchers, $64,685. Glad to say this is the 5th of 5 years. This will be the last time this will be showing up in capital. New projects, bulky waste pile closure. We're putting $25,000 on that right now, which is that's minor compared to what it might cost us 10 years from now. It would cost the town anyway. I've heard estimates from $800,000 to $1.5 million to close down the bulky waste part of our transfer station. We don't charge, as you know, any fees for bulky waste. We don't charge any sticker fees at this time, but we're going to have to deal with this somewhere down the road. I probably won't be here, but there's a lot of taxpayers here that are younger than me that will have to deal with this. And I think the prudent thing to do is to stop putting aside monies now for it. The walking floor trailer, $46,000. This is actually $92,000. And when the Board of Finance asked us to cut our budget by $106,000, I said, Donnie, what do you want, the back half of the truck or the front half of the truck? Because you're only getting half. He said he'll wait and get the whole thing at once. So, but we cut half there. And as I said to the Board of Finance, we can go through and cut the budget by $106,000 by taking 50 line items and cutting 2,000 out of every line, which wouldn't make sense because now we're hurting a lot of different areas. It's always easiest, not always the best, easiest to go to capital because it's where you have bigger numbers. So we took $46,000 out of that walking floor trailer and hope to get that next year by adding another $46,000 next year. Plan of Conservation and Development, most of you know what that is. It's due to be done by the end of 2023. There was a fantastic job done in 2013. And because of that, we don't have to start from scratch. If you were here for that, you know, there were many community conversations, many discussions. Juliet Hodge was our PDZO at the time. And because we don't have to start from scratch, we don't have to, it's not going to cost the town as much money as it did back then. We have $15,000 in last year's budget capital. We're going to add another 30, which will bring us to 45,000. And I think that's somewhere close to where we need to be to get this completed. The last thing in new projects is animal control vehicle. As you know, the two most popular words in social media and around our town is called Kasha. I mean, she's in Facebook every day, 3 times a day, no matter if it's a dog, a squirrel, a cow, doesn't matter. But she needs a new vehicle, and she's been asking for one for a while, and this year we finally put in the budget, and knock on wood, it hasn't been cut yet. Okay, the last page here is reoccurring projects. Every year we try to put money in to refurbish one of our trucks. If we refurbish our trucks, it means we don't have to buy new ones as quickly. I think Donnie told me this year it's truck number 17. Transfer station improvements, $10,000. There's issues with the doors there. There's other issues at the transfer station that have to be addressed. Computer expense, $17,000. Town building maintenance, $20,000. And we know that we have to probably paint the old town hall. That sounds like a song, but we have to paint the old town hall because it has blistering and white paint coming off it. And I'm told that could cost somewhere up to $17,000. Volunteer fire company turnout gear. I'm not even sure I know what that is, but it's $23,000 and we budget for it every year. Land acquisition fund, $2,000. Originally, the ask for the Conservation Commission for this was $20,000. Then it dropped to 10. And then we said, well, why don't we make it 7 so we can round up to an even 80 because they have 73,000 right now in capital from past budgets. We settled on $2,000, which rounds that off to $75,000 if we end up buying a piece of land down the road, we feel we need a piece of land, we have $75,000 to put towards it. Volunteer fire company rescue gear, $11,000. And 1750 house at Hewitt Farm, which is also called the John Dean Gallup House. By the way, we had a meeting there earlier this afternoon at 4:30, and we were close to renting that out. We already know of at least 3 applicants that want to rent it from us. And that's why we were able to add some rental income to the budget at our last meeting. Some things there was $25,000 left over in the budget. We were adding another 30, that would give us 55,000. We have to fix a porch beam on the back of the house, build a new bulkhead, nail down the wooden floors that are loose, floorboards that are loose, and hopefully in the late summer, early fall, put new windows in. And we think we can do that whole thing for right around $55,000. So now we get back to the page that I said we're going to give you the best budget I think you've seen in the last few years. If you take the $140,954 in government operating budget, if you subtracted the $85,000 that was not put in the last 2 years, subtracted this year, it gets us down to a 1% budget, which is much easier to pass than a 2.72, but those expenses aren't going to get paid by themselves. So we could come back and ask for that money later, which we won't do. Secondly, the $194,000 that we used last year out of the undesignated fund to balance the budget. We're asking for no money out of that undesignated fund this year because that would be a payback next year. If you took the $194,000 out, well, then the budget, just the 85 brings us down to a 2.18 from a 2.72. And we take the 194, brings us down to a 1.28 compared to a 2.72. In the year 2021, 22, the overall budget ask, including the Board of Ed and the town, was 2.08. 2020, 2021 is 2.03. 2019 and 2020 was 2.73. We're asking for 2.64, but we're not asking to come back later. And we're not asking to use asking money to balance the budget next year. That's why I believe this budget is an honest, transparent budget. It's one that's not going to, what we wanted to do is get everything that we think it's going to cost us to run the town in the budget the first time. And that's where we are. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. No, I agree. You put together a rock solid budget that certainly services all the needs of the town. So here are the overall numbers. Total expenditures, 21.6 million. Total revenue, 21.7, giving us the first revenue surplus we've seen in a couple of years of nearly $110,000. Debt for our capital project school and emergency services building, 25 million. And that's about 6.4%, the payment across that, 6.4% relative to our expenditures. Undesignated fund remains very healthy, a little over $3 million. And we have a nice fund balance that is about 14% of our expenditures. And these revenues are based on the current 28.6 mill rate. Next slide, please. Bob just showed this. There is about $550,000 of new spending at a modest 2.64% increase across the debt, operating budget, Board of Education, and capital. Again, what I would frame this as certainly a modest increase. Next slide, please. So this year, the Board of Finance did take a more of a hands-off approach. In subsequent years, we've kind of gone into the line items of the Board of Selectmen to suggest what to cut. This year, it was just a bottom line number that we'd asked for. And both boards came back with that bottom line being met and leaving 100% line item discretion to both those boards. The only request we had going into this process, and that was unanimous by the Board of Finance, was we wanted a balanced budget. We didn't want to have to go into the undesignated this year as we had to previous years. So with that, friends, that is the proposal that we have for you to discuss tonight. I'm looking forward to taking any questions along with the Board of Finance, Board of Education, and Board of Selectmen. Thank you. Oh, so one more thing. I guess the roving mics will be going out to the audience, and questions from those online. I guess Christine, you'll have to call those out. So I don't know if Brett and Nicole have the mics out yet, or if there's any questions that we can start with in the room.
Name is Arthur Armstrong from Wyosset Lake Road. Just one question. On the 16,000 that came from weed abatement, was that grant money that we had gotten last year? Okay, so it's no longer there then. All right, thank you.
Brett, maybe just for the people at home, there was an answer to that question. So
I nodded emphatically. Yes, that was grant money. Sorry.
Good evening, Dan Spring, past Board of Finance Chair, 231 Wyosset. For Board of Ed, Christine Wagner, maybe just for the benefit of the public, just bring a little more definition to the non-lapsing account and how that's funded.
At the last Board of Finance meeting, we went in depth over that account. The way that is funded is that most towns around the state have an undesignated fund for if they end up having any kind of savings, I guess, at the end of the year is what you would call it, or leftover money in their budget. Because that money was approved for educational use, we're able to carry over 2% of our budget into the non-lapsing account. Typically, that's a very small amount. Usually, if you look at the history of our budget, it's usually $25,000, $30,000 is what we would anticipate going into that. However, the last 2 years, because of the savings from transportation and COVID expenses working in our favor, actually, that account now is at about $300,000, I believe. We have been working on, we have a large list of items that normally would be put into the budget as a budget request. And we've, as the Board of Ed, made a decision to pull out any items that are one-time expenses And we're now prioritizing the list. The list is long. But we will be working on prioritizing that and looking towards that non-lapsing account instead of to the taxpayer again, to try to fund those needs at the school.
Brian Rathbun, 263 Grindstone Hill Road. And when I read the first page here, it says you can ask questions, make comments, and provide input on the impact on the budget. And that's what I planned on doing. I've been looking at the budget quite often. I've been to the virtual meetings a lot of times for the Board of Finance. So basically, my comments would be to the Board of Finance, and then, of course, I won't forget the Board of Education. So anyways, I'll start on, which you don't hear me say this very much at all, but on page 4, item B1, B1.02, and B1.01. And that's our Board of Selectmen, who are the CEOs of our town. I believe that we should not lower the first selectman's salary. To me, that's a kick in the butt. He deserves every penny that is set there, which should be $56,250. The second and third selectmen, they also put in a lot of hours for our town. There's no way I can calculate the hours these people put in for our town. So to keep it simple, I just figured a regular person like me that used to work without the overtime and the extra jobs would be 2,080 hours a week based on a 40-hour week, 52 weeks a year. If we gave them $15 an hour, they would earn, I believe it's like 31,000. So, but, and that's that's a well-deserved. They do deserve it, but I don't think the town would accept something like that. So I would say, well, at least give them half of that, which is $7.50 an hour, which is hard to get people to work for that. Anyways, that would be $15,600 an hour. I would propose for the second and third selectmen for this year. Right now, we got a real deal because I believe that they're earning about $1.44 an hour. How we like to go back to earn that. Page.
So Brian, would you like us to comment a little bit on those first bits that you have?
You want to
Happy to.
comment on them? You said?
Yeah, I guess the first selectman's salary, that was a function of, that salary wasn't lowered. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, it was just coming in for, a partial year. Also, the second and third selectmen, those are not full-time roles. So the way these are funded now are somewhat reasonable. And again, everyone puts a lot of hours in, they're all volunteer roles, but they're not 40 hours a week. Just wanted to share that. So please go ahead and continue with your question.
That's another reason I said, you go, even if you went half. But, okay, so anyways, Paige, I understand. I appreciate you comment on that. Well, if we go to page 5, I think it's the Board of Finance. We look at the all of the B16s. I know it's recreation, and I know it's important for our kids to have recreation. We have recreation in school. We have hiking paths in North Stonington. We have streams. We have many places they can have recreation at. I don't know if we need to provide as much as we do. The library also provides recreation for our children. The town has activities. And like I mentioned, we have fishing, we have trails, and we have hiking. Page 6. I saw where Holly Green is $1,668. That's B2202. And I didn't know if I thought we still rent at Holly Green? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we're paying them for. I thought we sold the stuff we had over there.
Brian, the senior center is considered part of Holly Green.
Okay.
Brett, am
So-
I correct on that? That's what I thought.
Okay, so that's for the senior center?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Go to page 7. Some of these are my answers, so I'm trying to figure them all out.
Brett, before you go on, just for people at home, the answer to that question was what?
The answer to the question is the senior center is part of Holly Green.
Including the water for the senior center.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so page 7. I've got 3 different things into there. Let's see, the first one, 2303. 2303 is the Pocketuck Neighborhood Center, and I thought we gave them some COVID money this year that they requested. So I'm just thinking that we should go back to the 25,000 to them. Going to 23.16, and I'm just I put these other 2 numbers in, 34.08 and 34.09, which the 23.16 is the KNSA, 34.08, I believe that's the Affordable Housing Committee. Oh, that's the Conservation Commission. And the 34.09 is the Affordable Housing Committee. Now, I really think if we zero them out and have them, most of the time it's an advisory committee or it's oh boy, what do they call him? Nonprofit. The only way I can see we can really get accountability for those committees is if they go to the selectmen, once they got to fund something they got to do, they figure out how much cost they need. They go to the selectmen and tell them what they need, and the selectmen can go to the Board of Finance for an appropriation of what they actually need instead of an estimate that might not even be near it, either plus or minus. I think that would solve some of that problem there. Page 10.
Brian, just make sure you're talking to the mic, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Page 10. Let's see, what did I do with page 10? Land acquisition fund, C315. You put 2,000 in, I understand the reason to even it off to an amount. My checkbook's never an easy amount, even amount, so I'm saying just go back to the 1,000. I think town's got enough land right now that we got to take care of. And to buy more at this point, I don't think is advisable at all until we get the Hewitt property squared away. And you mentioned the plan of conservation and development. And man, I don't know how much that's a state mandate. Do we get any money from this state? Because and they're pushing that down our throat. I think we ought to go back and tell them. I should say lower it, and then if we just tell them we couldn't afford it. And I think that's all I got for the selectmen's budget. So now I figured like I promised.
Christine's ready.
I know, it isn't bad, it isn't bad. It's just typical me looking at the budget. And I am concerned about both budgets with the contracts. It's organized. Oh, yeah. That's it. Okay, so, see, number is under, I don't have them in order, perhaps, okay. I'll try to keep them in order for you. Anyways, under the code 140.
$140?
140.
Oh, yeah.
Negotiation funds.
Yes. Now, when you negotiate those funds, is that why is the town paying that for the union to negotiate too? Or do they fund their own negotiation?
The town funds their own, and that isn't just the cost for the negotiation itself. We do have a teacher's contract coming up, but we're also in the process of a couple of other contract negotiations. And right now we're getting ready to work on the secretary's negotiations. And then we also are working on looking at some restructuring, some things with the IT, like I referenced, and some things with business manager. So we need to have money aside so that depending on where that contract ends up, we're able to fund it. So the town, I don't know what the town does on their negotiation, but that's where it is now. Instead of estimating and putting that number into the line item for those, we want to put it into a fund that we're able to fund and to pay our attorneys and to do everything else. We have a big teacher's contract coming up this year that we'll be working on negotiating.
Good. Okay. Boy. All right. Let me chew on that. The number 830, which is a broker fee. I definitely don't understand what we're paying broker fee for. Are they buying stock?
Oh, because we are, right now, we have somebody looking at all of our insurances. We're looking at cyber insurance. We're having a kind of an audit, basically, of our entire insurance services. And that's what that is for, to make sure that we're spending our money most wisely we can on all of the insurances that we need for, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Deb, if you mind, or she'll need a mic.
So what we've done, bring in the broker is to evaluate the insurances for efficiencies, to assure that we have the right levels of insurance, that the insurance we currently have is meeting the needs for now and what we can do in the future. But cyber insurance, as she said, is extremely important as we see things that are going on around us. So to protect us going forward and to protect all of you, as well as the school, we're looking very, very intently at how we can get an application to move forward to be approved. Currently, the way that we have it, we aren't able to do that, but we're making the modifications and changes needed to go forward to have the coverage that's needed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. 640, which is utilities. And I understand we got solar on the schools, but yet it's an increase of 20,800. So I guess the solars aren't working too good.
You're right. We are not experiencing any savings from solar currently. And we are actually a little bit concerned with the costs of utilities about the increase that we put in there, but we're hopeful that we can stay within that number.
1,400 tuition.
1,400.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure we got students going out to other towns. So we pay for that, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we got students coming into town, which they pay for. So how's is it balanced?
We don't see the money for tuition coming into the town. I mean, the town sees it, but right now the Board of Ed is not realizing any of that money directly on our budget.
So we don't know.
So
if it's balanced.
we're providing the programming and everything within the budget that we have, but that's a line item that goes directly to the town, the tuition.
So how many kids do we have going out?
Right, going out?
Yeah.
I don't know how many kids, but you can see that the Ledyard Voeg and the Magnet School is combined about $100,000. Well, actually about $87,000.
Right.
And we're actually seeing a reduction in students going out, and we're starting to see a lot of students that went out coming back in. So it's at one of the lowest points it's been in quite a few years.
And what is the cost per student? I know they used to give that in the presentations, but they didn't this year.
In North Stonington?
In North Stonington.
I had that. I don't know that I have it with me. Can I get it out to you later?
Sure.
It's
yeah.
still really low relative to our DERG and everyone around us. We're still on the lower end of that, but I don't have the exact number.
Isn't it like 11,500 or something like that?
That's what we charge for tuition. Our cost per student is higher.
Yeah, I think I looked at one site. I believe it was close to 20,000.
No, it's not anywhere near that.
No,
Deb
this
has that number.
I don't, like I say, it wasn't ours.
Deb has that
Right.
number.
The cost per student is currently, it's based on 2 years ago because that was the financial that the state has record of. Last year's has not been fully processed, but we were at about 17,300 per student.
Right. And how many actual students we got now? I had like I say, I don't know if this website was right, but it was 741. Is that close or?
743.
743, okay. And the teacher ratio, is that 10 to 1, 15 to 1?
Depends on the grade in the class, and it's hard to say what the teacher ratio is exactly. I think our average class size at the elementary is I'd be guessing 16 or 17. I hate to guess on that. I can get you those numbers though, if you'd like.
All right, yeah,
All
I'd
right,
like to have
I'll
them
make a
just
note of that.
just to know, and then I
All
can
right.
compare them. Let's see, so that was the student teacher ratio. Any other? Well, I guess I can make my comment now. I'm really concerned about when I look through here, I saw a lot of stars, and that means it's contractual.
Stars.
And one of the, when you have stars next to the teachers that are being hired or whatever, it's a contractual.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I was in a union for a long time, and a union is good. I'm not speaking against unions, but I know how they work. One of the things they do is they create jobs. And I watched them many times do it. They would say, okay, here's, and I'm not picking on the principal, I'm not picking on the superintendent, I'm just using this as an example. Let's say you have the principal, okay. Gee, I'm overworked, I need an assistant. And he gets a little bit more, well, maybe I could use two. Corporations do the same thing. So next thing you know, you've got 3 or 4 people in there. Let's see if we can look at that when these contract raises come up. If the student ratio is real super low, maybe they got to take on a few extra kids and we could save some money on hiring an extra teacher. I'm just going through that. It's just a suggestion.
No, I understand, Brian. And to speak to that a little bit, you'll actually see our teacher's salary is only going up, not only, but it's going up 1.3 this year. Our contractual obligation to that is significantly higher. So we have done an excellent job through attrition, through bringing people on at lower rates than what we're replacing. And we are not administrative heavy. I know a lot of people tend to think we are. We have one principal and assistant principal for a middle school and high school. We have one principal at an elementary school. We've reallocated, restructured the special ed director program to give some assistance to that principal in that position instead of creating another position. We've worked within a position we already have. That new position and that new hiring is actually lower paid than what the outgoing special ed director was. So we are absolutely aware of what you were saying and working very hard to continue to do that.
Okay. And the other thing I was wondering, and I know you probably hear nothing against them. It's just the name, the superintendent, we pay quite a lot of money to. I'm not sure if our school, being so small, could have maybe a part-time superintendent. I don't know if the law allows that or not. Those are the things I'd like to see our Board of Education look at, because $14 million is a lot of money out of my pocket and everybody else's pocket. We all work the same thing. We work hard for our money. So with that being said, I just like to see when these negotiations going on, be a little tougher. And if a lawyer says, don't take it to arbitration, I know he's a lawyer, but he's going to get his money. And I want to see our town, somebody's got to push back. Sooner or later, we got to push back because we get overfed and the people aren't going to pay. You're going to be made to cut teachers, either lay them off or not hire anymore. And you don't want to be in that position, but we got to let the state know that the teachers union is one of the strongest in the country now. And they keep pushing and pushing, and they also know that they keep pushing, and there's going to be a time we say no, and maybe that time is now. So thank you. I'm sorry I took over 2 minutes, but I tried to get it within that. Wasn't it?
Thank you, Brian.
Hi, and I'll walk from Northwest Corner Road. I'll try not to take too long, but it's hard to flip the pages here. Sort of a general comment at the beginning. I was here when there was a planning meeting. I think it was just the selectmen, not the two commission boards combined. But sort of the feeling was that when the Board of Finance needs to cut, they cut from all the planning funds that the selectmen were trying to get in place. So when they finally did need the money, it was already there, or they didn't have to come back for a special ask in the middle of the year. They were trying to plan ahead, which I think is a smart thing to do. Then you don't surprise the town with having a big request later on. So I would hope you would let them continue that policy and not have to shock the taxpayers whenever they do a bigger ask. Because I think they're being prudent and planning ahead to have the money there for when you need the new truck or you need to refurbish a building or whatever you need to do. The other thing, I agree with Brian that I think it's too bad to cut the first selectman's salary, either because of who he is or for the job, because I've found him to be extremely attentive, including when my phone didn't work. He helped me realize what it was and made my family feel much better that I wasn't dead on the floor. Turned out the phone company made a mistake. And also when you want to be having a new selectman and you want to jack the price up, then you're doing it from a lower level where really the job perhaps should be funded at the higher level so it keeps progressing. It's generous of him to accept the lower salary, but as Brian says, we think he deserves it. And in the future, you may want to, when you're trying to get somebody else to take the job, you want to make it attractive as well. Now I got to go rustle the papers and go to the comments. We have a grant writer and you've got him or her in for 13,000. Has this person gotten over $13,000 worth in grants? You somehow judge a grant writer by whether they've earned their salary.
Yeah, and in previous years he has. He has not done much this year because we haven't had many grants to throw at him to try to investigate. So a couple of grants he was working on with the past administration, we put the brakes on. So he's not earning his 13,000. He's not getting paid the 13,000 either. He gets paid on his work. So he doesn't automatically get a $13,000 check at the end of the year. So if he's not working on it, he's not getting paid.
Is part of his job to go look for grants to apply for?
It is. And some of the ones that he sent to us so far are not, they didn't fit the town and what we were trying to do in town. So I said, and he was working on some that we stopped. But I look at we have grants come down every month from Joe Courtney's office. There's a slew of them come down. I go through every one of them and I send the ones to him I think are beneficial to look into deeper.
Look, I would expect there must be ones out there for specific projects, but you have to go scramble and find them.
And that's why we have him to do that.
That's why we have him to do that.
Actually, but just so you know, he does not get paid unless he works on a grant, puts the hours in, and then hopefully we get the grant.
But go find some new ones. I mean, for land acquisition, there are all sorts of grants. And maybe that's a more specific area than ones for towns. I don't know.
I agree. Thank you.
Anyway, that's my question. Choo-choo. Why is there no insurance for the ambulance? Is that they get their own in their own budget? It's just here is an empty line or a dollar?
No, because they combine it with the insurance from the volunteer fire company, so it's all in one bucket now. I
Okay. And when the North Stonington Education Center operating budget is a brand new item, is that for this space here or for the?
It covers the entire campus, which is the one-story wing, the old middle school, the two-story wing, which is the old high school, and this middle section that's used.
So it's what we use.
We're
Okay.
using now, correct?
But there was no item for it until this year.
Because it wasn't budgeted in the last 2 years. It was paid for, but it wasn't budgeted.
Yeah, sure, we paid for it. State troopers, how many do we have? Is there any help coming in for those?
And we have two, and one during the day and one in the late afternoon and evening.
Is that enough?
We do have other state troopers that come and cover the town when they're not on. Is it enough? I don't know. It seems like our crime rate isn't that high compared to some of the other local areas, but as of right now, it's what I guess you can say that's what we can afford. We used to have three, but that got cut back a few years back. But the state was paying a lot of that too. Now the town pays most of it, so.
Okay. Shoo. Oh, the tipping fees aren't increasing for the SCRRA. I would think they would do that because of the price of gas and all that.
Donnie, can you comment on that?
It's fine to see it stay stable, but
yeah. So we went from Preston Incinerator with a new contract with the Lisbon Incinerator. So the Lisbon Incinerator is about $15 less per ton.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know, that contract hasn't changed. I believe it's a 7-year contract.
Oh.
So they have to obligate it till that contract runs out. But right now, we haven't seen any change. We do have a meeting Wednesday that Bob and I am going to attend at SCARA to find out just the latest stuff. But
yeah,
as far as I know, that contract has not changed.
Because there's another town, further north that has switched from one place to another.
Yeah,
just because
correct.
they got a better deal with the other one. But
Correct. They were running theirs to Hartford.
Yeah.
And that, or East Hartford, and that incinerator is failing, and it's going to cost a lot of money. You probably saw the news. It's going to cost a lot of money to fix that. So a lot of people are pulling out of there because other towns are paying anywhere between $95 to $120 a ton, where we're paying $56 a ton. So we got it pretty good right now.
Okay, thank you.
Just for everyone at home, that's Don Hill. He's the road foreman. Answering that question.
Okay. And to the senior center, I was hoping you would have given Teresa more of a raise. She is the hardest working, greatest asset we have, I think. But then I looked at what everybody else was getting, and so it was probably more in sync with those. But she takes care of so many people, and we have more people than Dave that are in need in this town. And she knows most of them and does all sorts of things to help them. She knows the official tools that you can use for getting home heating oil for less, and your electricity bill somehow worked out. But we have some needy people in town, and she is doing a lot to help keep them in their houses and eating. Sort out here. That may be the most of it. I think I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you all for working so hard.
Thank you very much.
John Olson, 358 Wyosip Road. I'm uncharacteristically unprepared. I only picked up the copy of the budget on my way home about an hour before the meeting, so I really haven't had a chance to review much of anything. I do want to thank you for your efforts in putting together a budget neutral, and also for not having anything off budget, which is a major improvement. But I do have one minor question. Until I look over the budget in greater detail, I won't see the other things I need to see. But underneath the Planning and Zoning Commission budget, it's B34035, membership dues. There's from the 2020-21 to what we're proposing now, a tripling of membership fees from $250 to $755. I'm just wondering, what are we becoming a member of that it costs us additional funds for the Planning and Zoning Commission? Is that some type of county association of some kind?
John, what line was that? I'm sorry.
It's B34.035. It's on page 9, about halfway down.
Bob, would you like Nate to answer that?
Sure, you can answer.
I'm Nate Reichert. I'm the planning officer. The budget increase came from two areas. I am a member as the planning official and the zoning official, a member of CASIO, which is the Connecticut Association Zoning Enforcement Officials. They raise their rates, I think from $50 a year to $150 a year for what we have to pay to them. That's for my dues as well as Cheryl's dues. So we got hit twice on that one. And then also the Planning Association, which is a national organization, but also a Connecticut level organization, is based after year 3, which I am now have been a member for more than 2 years, because my membership from Rhode Island carried over to this year. It's based after your first 2 years is sort of a teaser rate you get. And then after that, it goes on a percentage of the salary that you're paid for both national and also Connecticut level dues. So it's really dues for 2 organizations, CASIO and the Planners Association. Both, I have to say, are incredible resources, setting up all kinds of informational things for me to draw from when it comes to dealing with what's going on, not as much at the national level, but clearly at the state level, bringing policy changes and letting us adapt to that without having to, allowing me to do that at my office as opposed to having us pay attorneys to figure that out for us.
Thank you. The only other comment I wanted to make is because I just got a chance to pick this up this evening, and this has been the habit in the town to vote on these things very rapidly, because the goal is to get, once you've done all the work you've done, try to get it passed as quickly as possible. So we're on the schedule with the financial goals and the audit and everything else that's yet to come. But is there any reason why we can't extend or allow time after this evening for people who haven't made it here or haven't picked up a copy yet to actually review it? And a lot of times we have trouble passing a budget, and a lot of that is due to people not really understanding what's in it.
So John, let me give you the schedule. So next, we have a board of selectmen meeting tomorrow night, but the one, we're gonna have another one on the 19th, and that's to schedule the town meeting, which at this point would be May 2nd. So we're looking at over almost 3 weeks there.
Okay.
And then from that point, we'll schedule the referendum, which will be May 16th. So basically, you've got a month to go through this, but the town meeting on May 2nd is going to be open for questions also.
Okay, that's good, because it hasn't always been that extended in length.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Olson, we have a Board of Finance meeting this Wednesday, so if you can review it between now and then and come either online or to the meeting to provide additional feedback, we'd be happy to hear your comments this Wednesday. And that's for everybody as well in the audience. If you had questions or concerns and wanted to come in on public comments on Wednesday, please do so.
I have a couple comments. I think tonight. What? My name? So gross. I'm
Where
not
do you
going to
live?
tell you where I live because somebody may want after me.
We can attest that you live in North Burlington.
Say to the Board of Finance, you've heard it from me for years since you took away the first selectman salary. You hear it again tonight. There's no excuse for it not being up where it should be. We want intelligent people in the position. And to get it, you're going to have to do it. And I say you do it in 2 phases, 56,250 this year. Next year, you go to the 65,197. Then you should be figuring out when you should be putting raises. Remember, it's a position that you're putting that tag on. Not an individual coming in. Whoever you get coming in, I would hope to hell you would know it. They deserve that. I didn't get to the Board of Ed's budget, but I'm sure they've done a great job. The Board of Selectmen, when they presented the first budget to the Board of Finance, they gave you one hell of a good presentation. What they did is they had all their managers come in from the different departments and tell what they needed. At that time, the Board of Selectmen went through it and they estimated what you would get for a budget and what was right and what was too over budgeted. They reviewed 19 line items. That total number on them line items was $1,253,830. The difference between that, what the board, the chairmen of the committees came in and what they cut was $263,224. I think that's a damn good planning thing for any organization. Then I sat here and I hear, well, cut 200,000 more. I know what they went through and reviewed. I'd like you to tell me what you went through to come up to the 200,000. And then when you're done, tell me, is this a budget to get the vote? Or is this the budget which is a true meaning of what they need to run the town? That's it. Answer them questions, though, please. Is it a budget to get the vote, or is it a budget as presented by the Board of Ed and by the Board of Selectmen, and we took monies away from them?
So Joe, this is Paul. So the goal was a balanced budget this year. So we knew we busted our checkbook a little bit last year and having to take money out of the undesignated for very, very good reasons. So it was the focus of the Board of Finance this year to come to the townspeople with a balanced budget. We didn't want to borrow again from our undesignated. So that was the reason for the additional $200,000. During the process for both the boards, how they move money around, that's completely up to them, what they put in or take out of their line item budgets. But the only request from the Board of Finance was to balance this year's budget. And that's why those numbers were asked for.
I asked this question because you took a tractor, a trailer, which was presented to the town in such a deteriorated shape that I wouldn't put my worst enemy on it. But you took it and you pushed some of the money over to next year's budget. I looked at next year's 23-24 budget, and I think the Board of Finance is standing with a problem right now because you got $355,000 in there from the Highway Department, you got $100,000 in there from the transfer station, and you got $653,068. Keep dumping stuff on the future out there. How are we going to make the budget equal and pass? It isn't. We can't keep a budget without it going up somewhere. I don't know what the heck you guys do, but my scooter's okay because I'll run another cup for another 6 months, but gas is going up. Go in a food market, see what's going up there. Everything goes up. The only thing that don't is that make a nice budget in West Stonington. And you can't do it, fellas. You can't do it. And don't take away from the undesignated fund. You heard the selectman tell you one way that they were going to do things with it.
Right. So I think we do see some increases in our spending this year. I think it's modest, like we've said before, but we are adding new dollars to both these boards. So we know things are going up, and that was one of the main focuses of this board, that we're trying to watch out for the taxpayer, everybody else in the audience.
And
we're still funding everybody. Sorry.
And the budget that is going out is a budget to get the vote.
Can I just comment real quick?
Please.
Joe, I think if you look at the progression of this budget and how it was presented and how it was discussed and how it came to where we are today, I think both us and Bob said at his beginning of his remarks, their goal this year was to present a budget that did not require us to go into the undesignated fund. And the Board of Finance, when we first met, that was one of our first goals, was to say, we did it 2 years ago. I was on a committee. Paul was on a committee. Dan was on a committee. And it was COVID time. And we instead of increasing the mill rate on the taxpayers, we took from the undesignated fund $404,000 or whatever it was. And I stand by that decision all day long. Last year, we could have done it again and tried to lower the mill rate and take more from the undesignated fund. And we were going to do another like 250,000. And in the end, we said, no, we only did whatever it was, 190,000. It was going to be double that. There was proposal for that. And we said, that's going to cause too much of a hurdle to come over this year. So we only did 192. There were some additional shortfalls. So we ended up with 209 or something like that we have to cover in this year's budget. And so the Board of Selectmen came, we have a certain amount of revenue, which is increased, that would have covered that and then some. These guys came in with their initial budgets. The Board of Selectmen came with their initial budget. And then the Board of Education came in with their initial budget. And that budget was $200,000 over what we had for revenue. So we can't cover the shortfall. So we had to ask the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education to make cuts to now cover that shortfall. Because that's the overarching goal that we had the whole time. And that's why we asked them, and we split it down the middle. We said, all right, you give 106 and you give 106. And these guys did what they needed to do to bring that to fruition. It wasn't to get votes. It was to cover that shortfall and bring us in balanced. Now, after that, we learned that the Board of Selectmen have additional revenue from the solar project, and it's not extra revenue from, I don't know, Paul, you mentioned something earlier, but it was the revenues coming from potential rentals of the Hewitt Farm property. So we now, with that money and where we stand, we have a revenue surplus. Everybody, I want everyone to be very clear about this. We have a revenue surplus of 109,742. Now, what do we do with that money? Do we put that back into the undesignated fund? Do we lower the tax rate? Because right now this budget is based upon a 2.86 mill rate. Do you lower the mill rate that will take that budget surplus down? Or to your point, Ann, and to Brian's point, and now to your point, Joe, do we put some of that money back into the budget in places that the town feels prudent? That's what we're here to talk about tonight. You know, along with your issues about your questions, what have you, about what's in the budget on certain line items, we're certainly, you know, willing to entertain that, but those are specific questions for each board. We're going to meet on Wednesday night and find out what are we going to do with this 109,000, because there's different opinions on this board of what that should be done with. Okay. Does the Board of Education need more money back for instructional supplies? Does the Board of Education need more money for other things? Because we know we have grant-based positions that are really helping the kids that struggled during COVID get back to base. But they're going to go away as soon as those grants are gone. And that money is going to have to come from somewhere if we want to keep those particular people on board. So the discussion that we need to have and understand is, what are we going to do with this $109,000? And I'd like to hear from you guys what we should do with this $109,000. I've already heard increase the selectmen's budget. What else do we want, everybody? Do we want to lower the mill rate? Do we want to put it undesignated? Do we want to put more money in specific spots? Well, Joe, please comment. Yeah, go ahead. You also said increase the selectmen's budget. Was that put the selectmen budget back to where you said and then put some undesignated fund in?
That comment comes the same as my comment to you is, who's even looking out for next year? You haven't even looked out for this year's yet. We're still trying to figure where the hell we are in the budget this year and take that 109, put it back in where the hell we took it out of, and let's get it solved. Let's look at it that way. And then look at what you got going next year too. And maybe if we have a board doing that stuff, looking ahead, then the other people can follow through and come through and we'll have a smooth transition. Right now, we do 6 months budget period. What else do we do for the other 6 months, Mike? What?
Well, we're looking at we talked about it earlier and for the last couple of years, we've cut out things from capital. And we've had capital improvement commissions that come in and say, all right, this is what we have our 5-year plan. And then, you know, we cut things out of the budget because it's, you know, it can't pass. So we're trying, you know, and also to Bob's point earlier, let's make sure we have a good capital plan in there and try not to cut it. We did have to cut out whatever it was, half of the track, the trailer. You know, who wants to put the trailer back in? You know, that's what we need to hear from you guys. You know, do we put that money back in out of this $109,000?
So a little bit to that, Mike.
Please,
there are some
Mike,
cautions.
don't wait for me. I'm waiting for you that I voted for all you people there in the Board of Finance, the Selectmen and the Board of Ed, to tell me and give me some leadership. Don't wait for the poor guy down here to keep going up to you.
This
Let's
is a public
start
hearing.
coming the
This
other
is-
way.
It's a public hearing. We're supposed to
Mike,
hear
I'm
from the
not
public.
debating no more. I'm all done for tonight, please.
You're my boss, though.
That's right. So just a comment, Mike and Bob and everybody in the room. So we did realize, we hopefully realize a surplus this year. But I remember at the start of the presentation, we were talking about how those funds became viable. It wasn't just the solar farm and other things, but it was personal property and motor vehicles. We all saw used car prices go way up. And those funds are based on those inflated prices. Does anybody in the audience think that those prices might come back down? And how does that impact the revenue? So I think we have to be cautious to say spend it, because we don't know if it's going to be there, right? Because we hope it is, but I get the feeling that used car prices might come back some. So again, it's part of the discussion, part of the calculus. So it isn't, we don't necessarily have to spend it. We could save it. We could see if it actually even materializes next year. We could use some to cap the dump. We can buy a half a truck. We can do all kinds of things, but we can't really count our chickens before they're hatched here.
John Olson, Wyosset Road. My suggestion is you do what someone in a household would do, and you take anything that's a desire, anything that's something that you really would like to have, and you don't count on that money being there again next year, and you don't spend it on things that you can't purchase flat out and have. Otherwise, the money would be used to put in your savings, put in that undesignated fund for that rainy day when you need it again, because you need to have that. And the only other thing that you would do with it in your home you would pay down on your debt. I realize it's a small percentage, 2 2.75%, whatever that percentage rate is, but spread out over 30 years, think of all the money you would save if that little bit was kicked in. I know when I have had interest rates on my home or my whatever I had it on, I made sure I didn't just pay what was expected of me. I paid as much as I could and eliminated that debt as fast as I could so that I could live debt free. If we're going to have a budget neutral town, then we should also be a debt free town, because otherwise you're just passing it, like you say, kicking the money down the road, and someday later, hopefully you'll have it to pay off the debt.
I think may I, Paul?
Please go right ahead.
I think it's a solution that we didn't talk about earlier, and I think that's a very good point. My only caution is your last point about being debt free. It's actually detrimental to our town's credit to be.
I'm not sure why that's convoluted as far as the town is concerned, but I have a credit score that's through the roof because I have done my finances the way that I have.
I understand.
And because I have done that consistently, I don't know how many offers showing up in the mail all the time of corporations and banks wanting to loan me money for all the concepts and ideas and projects I'd love to be able to do. But it's because I paid off all my debts and I've shown a consistent faithfulness to being that way. So I don't know why the town would be viewed detrimentally if it was debt free. You would think it would bring all kinds of business venture and other things to this town because we're not always looking for someone else's money to pay our bills.
Pat Lewis on Boom Bridge Road. I have a couple of comments rather than criticisms. On the superintendent's increase, I saw his the description of his professional past positions, and it said that he currently is in a system where they share a superintendent. Have you considered that?
He's an assistant. He's a assistant superintendent. He's also the principal where he is. So they have they have a superintendent and an assistant. We only have a superintendent.
Is he a full-time superintendent? I thought it
He's
was
not, he's an assistant
So
superintendent.
there is a permanent superintendent that overlooks that
Yes,
system?
yes.
So is he capable of doing that or ever considered?
Yeah, we went through an extensive hiring process. He's more than capable. I think you're all going to be really, really pleased when you meet him. And the things that he brings to the table are forward thinking. He also has, we have a need for curriculum director, which we can't add to the budget. So he has some curriculum background. He brings a lot to the table. I think that we are going to be really excited to see what he can do for the town.
I guess my question is, if we were ever considered taking on another school system, or would he be capable of
He's
us sharing him with another school?
no, that wouldn't be something that we would consider.
So this 170 is just from the town of North Dayton and never any.
So it's very, when we looked at all the superintendent salaries around the state, it's very comparable. It's actually a little bit less than what a lot of superintendents are making. And the other thing, if you were to pull up his contract, he's not taking any benefits, which is significant. It's significant to about $26,000. So we're actually coming out ahead in this hiring.
The other question was on the substitutes. Are the teacher salaries including those permanent substitutes that we have, that you have? Last year, I think it was listed as a separate item.
It is, as the substitutes are a separate line item. The substitutes are not on the teacher's contract. We do have some full-time per diems that we are using every day, but they're not as part of the teacher's contract. Sorry, I don't know why this is.
So are there salaries under substitutes or are there salaries under teacher salaries?
Substitutes are going to fall under substitutes.
But the per diem permanents?
They are, let me get into the line item here. Hold on just 1 second and I can answer that for you. What line item is it? Deb, can you answer that quicker for me? Thank you.
If you're looking at 213, the object code,
Yes,
you can see there's a breakout of the substitutes.
right.
They are listed in the total of the teacher salaries. However, they are broken out separately. So yes, they are included as part of teacher salaries. We also have a service through Kelly Services that provide subs for our paraprofessionals, sometimes our nursing staff. So we utilize those, and those are under the central office.
So I see there's an increase in substitute pay, which probably they're underpaid. Evidently, all the school systems seem to be having a difficult time getting substitutes. But do you analyze how much time the teachers have off that they need permanent per diems and substitutes?
It is, it's all part of the contract. And we have a contract coming up this year for negotiation.
Will that be reviewed? So hopefully we won't need as many substitutes. I mean, do they get a lot of time off that we need all these hours covered? Anyway.
Yeah, we're doing what we have to. We have to cover our classrooms when a teacher is out. So we definitely are doing what we need to. And we did have to increase our substitute pay this year.
Well, I understand that. I guess my question is about the amount of time that the teachers take off. Is it?
I wouldn't
reviewed?
say it's out of the ordinary of what we're seeing. I guess in comparison to other districts, they're doing what they can by contract. They're not doing anything out of the ordinary. Deb, did you want to answer that as well?
I guess it has to do with how many days do they get off and are they using them to the max? Are they?
Well, what we did during the last contract negotiations was review the planning period at the middle high school. So we do utilize some of our staff in that manner as well. Rather than calling in a sub outside, we have teachers that would have a planning period that throughout the day, each period is covered by a different teacher sacrificing or giving up that planning period. And we have the ability to do that with the teacher 3 times throughout the year to help combat some of the increased costs that are associated with substitutes. However, we did have to increase that by $25 a day so that they are at least making minimum wage. That is where our teachers and our subs were paid at.
But how about the amount of time that they get off that's not vacation time or?
That is contractual, and that certainly is something that we visit every time we negotiate a contract.
Okay.
But when you have the 99 staff members that may be taking a day off here or there, each school has 3 subs that we try to use and utilize throughout each of their needs. So we do try to do it as efficiently as we can. And by utilizing at the high school and middle school level, we're able to utilize internal staff more than we can at the elementary. Elementary staff does not get a planning period.
I just want it to be reviewed when contracts.
Absolutely.
Come
During
up, please.
negotiation.
The other thing had to do with, you said that there are some mandates that we have to provide for courses. Is that true? Did you say that?
Yeah, we have curriculum that's expected, that comes down for reading and writing and math and things like that from the state.
Are there any state mandates that are funded? Or
I'm not
are only
understanding the
temporary?
question.
Or are they all curriculum? Are they?
I'm not understanding the question. I'm sorry.
Are there any new mandates that are just temporary?
As far as curriculum?
Yes.
No, I don't believe so.
Oftentimes with the mandates, they are put in with grants funds, and it allows you the 2 to 3 year time period to plan ahead to make it part of your budget. But most of those are mandated, and many of them are unfunded mandates. I could provide a list. I don't have it readily available tonight, but I can certainly provide that list.
I thought the state of Connecticut had a mandate that they implemented this year recently. I didn't know if that's going to be permanent or part of their English class curriculum.
Not particularly familiar with, I'm not sure. Without a mandate or without more information on that, I couldn't.
And we can get you a list of our curriculum if that's what you're looking at.
I
Is
went
it
online.
budget
I
specific?
went online and I found it.
Okay, so you have it, of what
saw
our
it.
curriculum is.
That's what I'm asking about. I saw a Connecticut mandate and I.
No, I don't know about I was wondering if you're wondering what North Stonington's curriculum is in relation to the budget.
Oh, no, I went online and I found it. Let me think if I had anything else. I guess not. The only other thing was, I think if we had any extra money, if we should fix the tunnel, unless that's available to be fixed by a grant. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Deb has a response for you.
With regard to the mandates, are you referring to the English as a second language or no? Because there is an English language learners mandate that they did put into effect that I just located. But if you would like to call, if you want to call and speak to that, we can certainly do that and I can help you out. You call the central office.
Oh, sure.
We have our
Thank you,
first
Deb.
online hand. So Kathy White, go ahead.
Hi, Kathy White of 208 North Westerly Road. I just want to, first, I have a question, but I'm going to make a couple of comments of listening to everybody. When I've attended meetings, I've been very much voiced my opinion about when we voted on our budget and then coming back for the appropriations fund, which I call the rainy day fund, that I don't agree with that. And because I feel like once we vote on the budget, so I like this process that's going on right now, that it's going to be a process where we don't come back and vote again and again and again and keep touching the fund. But I do believe in a true budget, and I voiced this before, like on planning, especially like on like capping the dump and stuff, and planning on it and planning ahead and budget properly. And because I know we talked about getting, maybe charging us maybe $20 a month to go to the dump just to prepare for that. Or like when you talk about 298 and I see 85,000 has been put to aside for that. In the past 2 years, we took it out of our budget. So when we talk about the 109, personally, yes, I like a low tax rate, but I I feel like we need to take that 109,000 because and put it toward because you can't plan on revenue until you have it. So we're not renting it yet. So I'd like to see the 85,000 actually add it what it really is and plan for things like that instead of just all of a sudden we're taking it out or we're touching it and use in the rainy day fund, which I don't believe in doing that unless we really have a serious emergency. So this is my opinion, but my question is, somebody had mentioned, and I'm not sure if it was Mike from the Board of Finance, about if people thought if we used the 109, didn't use the 109 and brought down our tax rate, what's the percentage rate that it really would make if you really asked yourself, do you understand my question?
I believe it'd be 28.42.
What would it be?
28.42.
And if you're asking Kathy what that would mean for an average home, I guess that would vary, but to be fair, it wouldn't be a wild amount of money to each homeowner, no.
Kathy, I think this is Christine. I think when we did a calculation at the last meeting, if it was a home valued assessed at $700,000, if we dropped it by 0.1, it would only be a $70 savings per year.
And that's why I'm asking this question, because I think it's a very important question. It's not yes, it's a savings, but technically it's not a huge. I want people to honestly think about that question I just asked. That, is it going to be a drastic change in helping you save money, or can we use this money somewhere else right now? So that's my thought, my opinion for everybody to think about. Thank you.
I think it's a fair one, Kathy. It's something we've had a great debate about on the Board of Finance. There are a number of ways to use this. Tax relief is one. Capping the dump is another. Debt service is another. I heard that one tonight. So those are all good things. Or we can spend it in operational budgets. Everything is on the table, which is why we're here tonight to hear from the public.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Laura Mello, go ahead.
Hi, it's Laura Mello from Anna Farm Road East. I first wanted to thank you all for keeping all of your meetings accessible and in a hybrid format. I think it's really important for all of North Stonington residents to have access to the information that you provide. I want to thank you for all the time and hours that you've put into the budget. I think it's one of the best budgets I've seen thus far in my 18 years of living in town. I also want to thank the Board of Ed for being very creative in offsetting costs by using grants, but also really stress that we have to continue to fund technology in our schools. Prior to the pandemic, we were very far behind other districts that already had Chromebooks and technology. Technology advances really help our entire student body. It helps our teachers. It prepares our students for future success and careers and even college. So I would encourage us to continue to look at that, not just this year, but in coming years, to make sure that we're always advancing that technology. I apologize that I wasn't able to make the last meetings, but a quick question: do we have funds that we put in to fix the baseball fields for the high school? I know that's been a comment that's been made in the past in several other meetings. So I just wanted to ask that quick question. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Laura. Right now, we do not have any money in the budget for that, but it is on our list in one of the expenses we're looking at for the non-lapsing account. We are putting up a net that should be going up soon, as soon as it comes in, and the backboard is going up. But the fields themselves, we are looking at that as one of the expenses in the non-lapsing account.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we have someone in the back. Now's the time to speak, everybody.
Thank you. I'm Olivia Rinkus from Pond Drive. I just wanted to go back to the 109,000 potential revenue question. And I wanted to throw my weight behind the other folks who are suggesting that we use it for maintenance projects or like something effective rather than just putting it back into like a general fund. And I also would like to specifically support like actual maintenance projects and not like property acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Paul?
Just thanking the speaker. I'm not seeing anybody else online, but hopefully there's some more questions in the room.
We have Brian coming back at us.
Very good, Brian.
Brian Rathbun, 263 Grindstone Hill Road. I know that when you had, I think it was $212,000, you split it for toward each, the Board of Finance and the Board of Education, the lower 106, I think it was.
That's correct.
To me, that was uneven. You know, you said it was even, but it's not, because you got one budget that's 14.5 million and the other budget's very low. And I think it should have been done in a ratio. I'm not sure what the ratio would be. Like, I don't have a calculator. I can't figure it out right now. But that's what I was thinking there. The other things was I heard the mention of scales. I don't know if that's going to come down. And I didn't hear about scales. I heard about possible at the landfill being charged and this and that. I don't want to see any of that. I want the landfill to stay the way it is. And it might be a time for someone to look at how much it costs to put scales in there, maybe to make the landfill last longer. At the end, I'd like to see budget the way you got it is basically a shifting of different monies around from one account to the other instead of giving it, like I say, I pointed out recreation. I've been doing that for years. People from out of town use our recreation area too. And there's been a lot of times that the backboards have been broke. So we got to get a control on that or not have it. And money you save, not saved from there, but take some of that money and shift it over to the ones where we wanted to put money. And you, Mike, asked about where you wanted us to do. Well, like I say, to me anyways, the CEO of our town, the three of them. I know they say the second and third selectmen are part-time, but they put in a lot of time to it. But anyways, I just need to rebuttal what you said to you. Thank you.
Well, just to kind of recap what you're saying, you've made points about you think that there was a uneven split for the 106 to each, and you're looking to get more money put back into the selectman's salary line. Is that correct?
Recreation and the other different things that I said.
Not from the 109.
The 109, that I understand was going to go into the general fund anyways. So it's not coming out of the budget.
At this point, it's a revenue surplus, Brian, just so everyone's clear. It's a revenue surplus that has not been determined. Where is it going?
So it's not in the budget at all.
It's excess revenue.
Excess.
That would go, if it's untouched, it would go into the undesignated fund. If we decide to put money back into the budget, we give the Board of Selectmen something or the Board of Education something that they had taken out from that 106 that the town feels like it should go back in. That's what we need to hear from you guys. If you say we want it to be to go in to lower the mill rate, because that would change the numbers here, that we want to hear that too. This is the conversation that we need to be having.
Well, that's what I said about my whole looking over this budget, Board of Education is still in the negotiations. You gotta get tougher on the negotiations. They will save money. That money will go maybe switch over to the selectmen's budget. And that's what I'm getting at. It's a matter of shuffling what you guys have come up with and presented tonight. See what I'm saying there?
Right, but right now we're
Same.
their budget's based upon certain numbers that they have right now, Brian. So I got your point, and I think that's directed to the Board of Education that you'd like to see them get a little tougher on the union. But I think that's for the next fight.
And the Board of Finance got to be tougher on the Board of Education, I feel.
I understand that, but we can't line item the Board of Education.
No,
So
I know that. But you're telling the Lord that budget a certain amount, and they have to go back and figure out where to do it.
understood.
I
And
can
we do
see,
that
Brian-
every year.
Brian, as I sat in some of those negotiations for the with the Board of Education for the unions, and it is a difficult thing to argue too much, because we do have arbitration lawyers that are there, and they recommend certain things, and we listen to those attorneys because they know best in many cases, but it isn't without trying to put more pressure on keeping those costs down. And I don't know if Bob or Christine D, if you can talk a little bit, I've heard a couple of times about the first selectman's salary. Can you describe why it went from 56 to 50?
All right, I'll comment on that since I'm the first selectman.
Thank you.
When I ran, I know what the job paid, right? So I knew it was $50,000 a year. That's what I ran at. I knew I was going to get paid that. I'm not advocating for an increase. I figured let me put one full year in at the end of this year. So next year, when we're having the same discussion, if I think I'm not doing a good job or the town thinks I'm not doing a good job, then you're going to get another selectman. And you might have to raise the fee for that new selectman coming in. Not everyone will work for what we pay the first selectman. I also might decide if I am doing a good job and I want to run again, I may say that I would like an increase at that time. But as of right now, this coming fiscal year, I knew what the pay was, and that's what I'm going to get paid. I'm not looking for an increase. I do appreciate all those that advocated for me to get an increase, but I find where I am for this year. Thank you.
And
I'll take a little salary.
The 56,000 to 50 was a function of a partial year. That's what it's described, right, Christine?
Yeah, that was the tail end of the last first selectman's pay, so we could keep him at the same rate he got elected at. And that's why we had to change. He actually was at 65,000. It would get lowered to 56 just to cover him for the last few months of his term.
Yep. Okay. I just want to make that clear to the audience. I'm not sure if that's just by looking at that row of numbers, if that's clear or not. Thank you.
Okay, we have an online comment from Dawn. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Dawn Grelowitz, Fowler Road. I have sat in a few of these meetings, so I now understand the time that goes into it. And like Laura Millo said, definitely appreciate the time and effort that's put forth. I have a whole page of things, but I know I'm supposed to keep it to 2 minutes. So 3 quick things I wanted to say. First of all, Mr. Carlson, thank you for mentioning Kasha. She's awesome. We give her whatever she wants. I think she's the one thing that the entire town agrees on. There's definitely no division there. We love our Kasha. Secondly, I'm hearing a lot about selectmen's salary. Really appreciate Mr. Carlson saying what he said to it. But I just wanted to mention that Christine Wagner mentioned that part of the savings for the Board of Ed was the fact that some teachers are leaving and she's able to hire people at a lower rate. So it is not just the Board of Selectmen's salary that's being decreased. We're also paying our teachers less as they come in. And thirdly, I see a lot of, or hear a lot of talk about this undesignated fund. And I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'd like to compare it to the Board of Education's lapsing fund. I kind of would appreciate if Christine would be allowed to mention the long list of things that she is using her lapsing fund for, just to make it public knowledge. I know it was mentioned at the last meeting, but I really think that the families need to hear that. So with everyone's permission, I would ask that. And again, thank you all for your time and efforts, lots of effort. Appreciate you guys.
So Christine, I think you did go over a few of those items to start the meeting tonight, right? What the non-lapsing might be used for. I'm not sure if there's any checks written out of it yet, but if you wanted to speak to something like that.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so the last time the Board of Ed met, we started putting together a list of items. We did just purchase the baseball net, so that will be coming shortly. We have playground equipment that we have that needs to be installed. We have the grounds behind the elementary school that were left after the school project that are in pretty bad shape. We need to do something about them. They're muddy. The kids can't play in it. The blacktop underneath the basketball court in the front of the school where the kids play and we do field day and everything else needs to be completely redone. It's cracked, chipped, falling apart, kind of dangerous. So we need to do some resurfacing on that. We have some issue with some printers at the elementary school that are aging out. We have cameras that need to be installed at the middle school, high school. We need to do something about the fields for soccer and lacrosse and the basketball. We priced those out around $50,000 for the basketball and $90,000 for the soccer. We can actually irrigate using the old well. So that's an option that we're looking at. We've had to add some software, Apple Track, which is a hiring software for teachers. We need to install a gate so that we can get back to pumping out the septic every few years when we do it. Let's see what else. There's a whole bunch more. Let's see, the mulch on the playground, we are able to add that. We do need to replace the curtains on the stage at the middle school, high school. They're really, really old. We've had to remove some parts of them because of fire hazard. We had a curtain on the stage at the elementary school, but they weren't able to cover the cost of hanging them back up with new hardware. So we aren't able to hang our curtains. So we're going to have to come up with the money to buy the hardware to do that. It's about $7,500. Technology is always an issue. There's more, but I think that kind of recaps kind of the immediate things that we're starting to look at.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, so Don, that I think there is the non-lapsing account for the Board of Education is analogous to the town's undesignated, other than the Board of Ed's fund is strictly for them and education, whereas the town's undesignated is used for education, for Board of Selectmen, for all the needs of the town. So it's similar, but not quite the same. I think Amy Friend was trying to speak. Is that true, Amy?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, just to everybody that showed up tonight, thank you, because, from our last meeting from the Board of Finance, we really, really were waiting for tonight to hear everybody's opinion. It's important to us. And also, as far as contracts, I heard that brought up a couple times tonight. And, just to let everybody know, our boards and from our Board of Ed to our Board of Selectmen, any of us can attend these meetings at any time when they're going over these contracts. A lot of times, by the time it gets to our board, there's nothing we can do about it. And there's not a lot that can end up being changed in a budget. So the best thing that people can probably do is attend all these meetings and get to know what's going on in the contract processes, because it's a big item in our budgets. And, when people speak up, I think it means a lot. So just get involved. And even if you're contacting people through email, you need to do that. That's pretty much it. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amy.
Paul, I want to make sure that we're kind of clear on this, on the RISA account, the non-lapsing account. So what it basically is the money, if money isn't spent at the end of the year, this is money that was allocated specifically for education by the town from last year's budget. And rather than the Board of Education say, hey, we have this money left, let's try to spend it on something and maybe not get the best deal on it. We have, and Board of Finance has given them the authority to put up to 2% of their expenditures into that non-lapsing account. So they can have that at their disposal, maybe when they can find something at a better price. Or like Christine say, fund things that are these one-time expenditures that should, that they need, that it's going to be difficult to get money from the town for. And this is money that you've already given them for education. It can be only used for education. It's not like the undesignated fund that we have, which is really, it could be used for just about anything. And it's meant to be for emergencies. But I want just everyone at home and everyone here to be clear that it's not like a little slush fund. It's if they happen to have a year where they got all this COVID money and have extra money, that they don't have to try to spend it unwisely. And also, if they are fiscally conservative with their budget and happen to have some money, they get some benefit out of that rather than it all going back to the town. And again, it's all for education purposes. Missed anything?
There's a long list. There's a long list there. That's great.
Wayne Coates, 108 Wyassa Road. I have a question for Christine, but first I'd like to thank all the board members and everybody for putting in your time. No, it's not easy, so thank you. Back when they started the building project, it was brought to some of the members' attention that the parking issue at the school is not the best. So I was hoping that maybe they were going to increase the parking numbers at the school, because when we had events, people were parking on the grass, any place I could find a place. And I think if I counted up the right spots, we are either a little bit less than what we had before the building project, or maybe a few extra ones. So I was just thinking that if we had this extra money, if that could be on the list or is on the list to discuss for additional parking at the school, because when we used to have field day and stuff, it was cars were all over the place. So I just thought there are a couple areas that could be used for parking, additional parking. And I was just wondering if maybe that could be put on the list to discuss for additional parking.
We can take that under consideration.
Roseanne Salisbury, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just echo again, thank you everybody for all the hard work you're putting into this. I've been to the last several meetings and have started to really see what goes into this budget process, and it's definitely not easy. I've heard a couple times some folks on the finance board say that they want to hear where the town would like to see that 109 go. And I would just like to say, I think personally, as someone in town with 2 kids in the school system, I would love to see some of that money go back into the Board of Ed budget. I've watched the Board of Ed deliberate over, where they're going to allocate their funds. And I think they've done an excellent job of keeping things as reasonable and streamlined as possible. And as we listen to Christine's long list of needs, the non-lapsing account can't possibly cover all of that. And the more we put things off, I think the more they'll build up over time. So I'm definitely in favor of funding as much of the educational needs as we can. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
John Olson, Wyosset Road. Now that we're gone round and back to the topic, that $109,742. I just did a quick straight line interest calculation over the 30 years. That would, if we did decide to use it that way, we would save the town $90,537 in interest, and that's without any compounding over the 30 years. So we're talking about minor things in comparison to another $90,000 we would have in the future if we utilize the money that way. Whether it goes into a savings account of an undesignated fund or split between the Board of Ed and the town to put into their rainy day funds, it doesn't compare to a $90,000 savings.
Okay, thank you for that.
Dan Spring again, Wyosset Road. Relative to the 109,000 going back into the undesignated. I think people have a thought that money going into the undesignated just sits there and is really not functional to the town. Contrary to that, what it does demonstrate is very strong fiscal responsibility on the part of the town. And by having the undesignated where it is currently, it really has allowed us, for instance, to go to the debt market and get very favorable terms. And by going to the debt market, we've made investments in the town that really have brought the town forward. And that's being demonstrated by the increase in the grand list. So this is how all the pieces work. And I think to put the money back into the undesignated at this next fiscal year just demonstrates that, yes, we've used it in the past 2 years, but we're being responsible enough to reforest that amount in the undesignated.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan. That was well said. For those who are unaware, Dan Spring, our former chairman and our mentor to many on this board. So thank you for that, Dan.
And just to clarify, with this budget, as with the 109, already does replenish what the shortfall we had. So we've already, we made a plan 2 years ago to try to fill that hole as fast as we can, and we've done it in 2 years. So, and then we still have 109 left. And Dan's point is definitely well taken. We've learned that lesson. Well, Paul and I for the last four cycles.
We have. We're in a great spot, not only for this board, but the previous boards that put us in this position. So we're in a good place, people.
Paul, we're here. Do you have more?
We have an online comment from Kathy White.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Robert White, 208 Norwich Wesley Road. I just a lot of comment about the 85,000 for the school. Last year we were told that the maintenance fees were 150 to 160,000. And I just was curious of why we were putting in 85,000 so low. And I know that, said that we had renters coming in, but that's been said for the last 3 budgets as well. And nothing's come in. The second thing, it's a little disturbing to me personally. The paving, now we're hearing, needs to be replaced around the elementary school. Wayne Coates just commented on the lack of parking that we have at the school. But we did away with a parking lot at the end of the high school up on top. We still have the street lights there. But I know for a fact that we did away with that because of cost overruns. And I drove through there the other day and I see a mess from where the ambulance that hauls the food from one school to the other is parking half in the grass, half on the blacktop because there's not enough access. And I just feel it's, the 100,000 could be used for stuff like that to pave that parking lot, add up our parking spaces that we should have had, so we have extra room, and pave the parking lot, the kids' playground. And I just feel that the budget for 85,000 is way too low, that you'll be coming back again. And my third thing is, with these increases, I mean, what's going on in the world today with everything increasing is just how much can people really afford, whether it's a 1% increase or whether it's a 5% increase. I mean, we're seeing 8% inflation rise, 40% at the grocery store, highest gas prices we've ever had. And that's just my opinion. But thank you for your time, and I thank everyone on the board for all the work that you do. I wouldn't want to be in any of your shoes, but thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Is there anything else out in the audience, Christine?
This is your last chance to speak. I'll give you 2 minutes. Anybody? Bueller?
No hands online, no hands in the room.
Great. So I think we heard a lot of comments tonight, a lot of feedback. Not particularly a specific direction, but I hear some folks would be interested in using this 109,000 if it does come to fruition for a variety of different projects. So you've given us a lot to think about. Again, I would just say one more time that these monies aren't all realized yet. We think they'll come to fruition, but they're not. Time will tell that, but the direction of the town is a positive one, so I think everybody should be proud of that. I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to say anything else before we choose to close out. Thank you very much for sitting there too in my time of need. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, thank you everyone for coming out and your comments. And again, we're going to be here on Wednesday. If you didn't get a chance to review and you have something to say, don't be afraid to come out or come online. It's hybrid, so you can speak during public comment there. You can write things in, and hopefully we won't miss them. And yeah, don't be afraid to reach back out. Thank you. We don't have to adjourn, right? Motion to adjourn.
Second. Third.
Thank you, John Boy. Good night.
I love it. Thank you. We'll see you guys Wednesday.